Big Ten Plus 4 is a member of Odd Pods Media and ASAP All Sports All Plays Network.
Hello and welcome into Big Ten Plus 4 for yet another week. The man raising the eyebrows on the other side of the screen, that's Sam Sprunger over there. Myself, Dalton Scheller, in a shirt and tie today. I feel like I'm kind of harshing the mellow a little bit, you know?
Well, I guess I don't know. I got nothing.
Fair enough. I feel like I'm going corporate today. It's just it's an odd feel for the show.
Yeah, well, it happens from time to time. Everybody looks like a penguin every once in a while, right?
Fair enough. By the way, if you're new to the show, we're college sports with a Midwest perspective, blue collar and blue blood. And as Sam Sprunger would say, shame on you for this being your first time tuning in and joining us.
I had my mouth full of coffee, so I just waved my finger. I wagged it in shame.
I know those little cards, those little key cards, and so I knew exactly that's what we were going for.
Yes, sir.
But we're going to be talking about a couple of different things in this week's show. The Big Ten is wiped out of both the baseball and softball College World Series. It's actually where we'll start here in just a moment. But also we're going to be taking a little bit more of a look at Big Ten basketball as we're starting to see some of the way too early preseason rankings.
Yes.
And, well, according to CBS, they don't have the Big Ten as far down as maybe we thought they would be. So we'll take a look at those rankings here in just a little bit. Also, we're going to bring back the feature that we kind of do here on this show, or the little gamey portion where we do Shootout with Dalton, and I think we're bringing out Shootout with Sam. I think we're gonna double up on this. Yeah, this is exciting. It's a Big Ten Plus 4 first.
That's right.
So a lot to get to. But let's start off with the baseball and softball College World Series. The baseball, since it's still early on, and by the time the show is starting to get going, we're probably getting into that next round. But both Michigan and Maryland bounced out in the first weekend in the regionals, and both came down to elimination games where both had a very controversial call that kind of went against them that may or may not have decided the games. Look, you give up 11 runs, like in the case of Michigan. I'm not necessarily going to say it all comes down to the umpires, but it was a brutal call that was reviewed and still left on the field in a terrible fashion.
Well, and you know as much as I do, and me from coaching, you're never going to be able to blame a loss on one singular thing.
Right.
So while the call might have been atrocious goodness, and may have been at a pivotal time, there are 17 different things that you could have done differently to prevent that one call from turning how the game comes out. It's frustrating, yes, because there's that one thing you can hang your hat. Well, that's where we lost it. Well, how about the base you didn't advance on the throw to first, to third, that would have scored you on the fly out the next batter. So I mean, yeah, it stinks to high heaven that a call like that gets amplified and looked at, and then the outcome of the game is different than the way it was looking. But yeah, I'm always hesitant to say, well, that lost it, because there are other things that contribute to that call making such an impact on the game.
And you're absolutely right. It's important to keep everything in context like that. But my question is, when you review that, you miss it on the field. I understand it. All that stuff is very possible. It's all very quick, right in front of you.
Umpires make calls in a snap response, so you can't damn an umpire for making a wrong call. It's when you review it and you still uphold the wrong call. That's the amazing part.
And I'm not exactly sure how that happens. Now, I know with to kind of bring it back to the Big Ten for a moment, the Big Ten softball tournament this year, they had replay and reviews, and it was the first time all season they had replay and reviews, and they just introduced it during the conference tournament. And so, by the
That's
way,
a
the big
rough time to do that. Goodness.
that is, but the Big Ten and the folks there pulled it off excellently. I mean, they did a great job. But you have to imagine there are hurdles, there are barriers when you set up a concept like that, and it's the first time, right? So,
Yeah.
I who knows? Maybe what circumstances were living there in Louisville, with Louisville being the home team and still getting the benefit of the egregious call.
Yeah.
But maybe so. Before we drop the hammer, I just want to say maybe there's room somewhere for the margin. Like there's.
And do you want to go
reason.
over the call that we're talking about?
Thank you. Yeah, I should have set that up in the beginning.
That's all right.
So Louisville with 2 outs sent a base runner to second, and as the runner was sliding into second, the Michigan infielder, you could see him catch the ball, and he puts the mitt down and hits the hand. You can see his hand bend back. So there's immediate contact. You can see it. It's evident. And then the player, after his hand bends back, touches the base, and he's called safe. They go to review it, and as clear as we just kind of described it there, they still went with it. And it had a lot of Michigan and Big Ten folks upset because it was such an egregious call. But again, that's the situation we've been explaining. And then the next at bat, Louisville would tie up the game. Now, remind you, 2 outs, it would have ended the inning, but instead they continue on, and a 9-7 game turns into 9-9 and 9-9, and then Louisville would win it 11-9.
Yeah, and the unfortunate, because that call was so bad, you snowball it with, it would have ended the inning. The next batter wouldn't have tied the game.
Yep.
I mean, like, those are all snowball effects to that one singular, just abhorrent call. And I don't know how you review it and say, yeah, he's safe.
Yeah.
There's no definitive evidence. You can see his hand respond to the glove. I mean, I've umpired a lot in the past too. It is hard to make those snap decisions, but you look for that evidence that there was a tag made, or I mean, you're looking for those things that say, yes, that does confirm what I called, or no, that's not, I screwed that one up. We need to, I mean, I've never umpired with the benefit of replay, but I don't know if it's a matter of, I don't want to make that call. I don't want to tick off this home crowd and call that kid out. That's not what you're paid for.
Correct.
Yeah, I didn't get paid. I umpired a game yesterday because my son's teams were playing a game. My son's team was playing a game that the umpires didn't show, so I umpired for free. I didn't hear anybody complaining, but if I'd have made an egregious call in a very close game, I would understand that they'd be yelling at me. But at the same time, I'm not getting paid for this. They're getting paid.
Correct.
If you make the wrong call, be a man enough or woman enough, if you're an umpire, whatever, be adult enough to say, okay, I screwed this one up. We can make this change, because it's bad. It's bad.
Yeah. And I was going to say, and I've umpired some before too, and again, not also with replay, and I never once caught myself saying, boy, I know I'm correct here. Like, and no matter what, like if I didn't for sure see the play, like I will listen to whatever information anybody has to provide me with. My point just being that I never was more important than the game. My ego, my pride was never more important than the game that was out there on the field. And that's not exactly what happened here, because again, replay is being done by somebody else. So just to clarify,
I understand that, but it still just reeks of, well, I'm not telling them I screwed this one up,
right. Right.
But I don't know what they're looking at to not overrule that call on the field. I don't know what they're looking at. So it's pretty rough. But like I said, there's 75 different things that could have happened minutely leading up to that point, that doesn't make the decision or the sway the game. It
Yeah.
just doesn't.
And the other one where Maryland lost, and forgive me, I don't remember the game situation nearly as much, but a Maryland batter hit the ball or bunted. I can't quite remember. It was a really weak hit if it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a bunt. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
just right in
Like a
front of home
swinging
plate.
bunt.
Yes, pretty
Yeah.
much. And so he's heading down to first, and he's running straight down that foul line. And infielder from Maryland, or excuse me, the opponent grabs the ball, throws it to first to
UConn,
try and get
wasn't it?
him out. Yes, it was UConn. So a Husky grabs the ball, is firing to first, and it ends up with a collision at first between the batter and the first baseman. The ball kind of went right towards the middle. The Maryland batter is obviously running through the bag and right towards the middle, and they end up calling interference on Maryland, the batter, who is in this situation the runner. And if you watch that play, there's nothing else the Maryland batter can do in that situation. I'm not really sure how they came away with that ruling, just because he's got to have a right to the bag. He's got to have a right to the bag.
Well, and it's pretty simple. They both have a right to the bag.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a stated thing. The fielder has the right to the bag, as does the runner. But the runner gets if there is, well, it's pretty simple. If the runner does nothing out of the ordinary to cause a collision, it's not his fault for the collision. Whether it be a bad throw, an errant throw that leads the fielder into his path, or if he just sets up on top of the base and the runner runs through, if he doesn't make any sort of move to instigate any sort of contact, it's like an offensive foul. He didn't gain any advantage from the contact.
Right.
He actually was going through his normal move, and there was a collision. That's a foul on the defense, or in this aspect, that would be obstruction by the first baseman.
And Sam, you coach baseball and
Uh-huh.
have for a long time. That's a pretty fundamental part as an infield. When something like that happens between catcher and first baseman, the catcher points, communicates like, "Hey, take this side of the bag. We're throwing to this side. Hey,
Yep.
take this side of the bag. We're throwing to this side." You throw it right to the middle. You don't necessarily expect to get that batter out because you know what you're doing. That's what happened.
I always tell my first baseman and catchers, if it's a bunt, like a swinging bunt or a straight bunt, it's inside. I mean, you're yelling inside. That means your first baseman's setting up on the inside of the bag. The catcher is taking the route to where he is inside the field of play. Now, they will yell outside, but that's on a drop third strike or something, to where they've got to go to the outside of the bag. The first baseman's allowed to do that too. He's allowed to establish his position on the outside or the inside of the bag.
Correct.
And if there's contact made while he's not making a move out of the ordinary, then that is interference. So, I mean, yeah, the communication is huge there, because you have to yell where you're going. They're always communicating that. And I always tell the catchers and first baseman, if the ball goes to the baseline, it's a toss up. Go after the ball, but if there's contact, you've got to expect that there's gonna be contact. And it's difficult, because most of the time, 99.75% of the time, that runner's not doing anything to try to obstruct or interfere with the play.
Right.
It just happens. Now, the position of where they're running, if they're in fair territory compared to inside a lot of people don't understand what that second line on first base is for. That's the runner's box, basically. If he gets hit or if he's obstructed with or run into while he's in there, he's not at fault. But if he's outside those lines and there's contact, then he's at fault. We don't just put those lines on the field for it to be pretty. There are reasons for it,
Yep.
And so always, I tell my base runners, always stay left or right of the foul line. I don't know why it's called foul line, but anyways,
it's a good question.
And you don't question the baseball gods, but why is it called a foul pole and it hits it and it's fair?
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, that's
But you always try to set your and things happen in the heat of the game that the thing, but there was no apparent move by that runner that he was going to trying to
no.
interfere with the play defensively. He was just trying to finish his play through.
So that'll bring up another question then, real quick, because
Yeah.
I do want to get to softball for a moment too before
Sure.
we hit the first quarter break. But you're a bit more of a traditionalist than I am, especially when it comes to baseball. This, of course, it brings up the argument you should have the double bag at first base.
No.
Against it, for it, apparently against it. Why?
Absolutely. It's here it is. It's your bag. The bag's in fair territory. I don't want somebody running through a foul side of the bag. You're not in the field of play. Now, yeah, you're supposed to stay inside your box while you're running. Technically, that's in foul ground, but it is part of the field. Let's not add another bag, for crying out loud. Rob Manfred's already trying to ruin it by expanding the bag by 3 inches. Because you know what does that do? I know I've gotten off of that, but what does that do? That just gives the base runner 3 more inches to slide to where he can barely touch the bag and still interfere with the play. Because as long as he can touch the bag, he can slide wherever he wants, as long as he's not going cleats up or whatever to try to disrupt the play. You're just giving him 3 more inches.
I would love. Oh, go ahead.
I know it's for safety, and I don't know the studies, but you almost always see highlights if somebody rolls an ankle or if there's a collision at a base
On
in
the
a
double
country.
bag.
There's not many times that happens. So we're gonna expand no, don't do a double bag. No.
Now we know we're saying this.
The orange bag needs to stay, and this is not poo-pooing anything. Softball and Little League.
Well, and you bring up softball and you bring up Manfred and the MLB, and we've talked a little bit before, poke some fun, and how baseball just, it seems like, especially at the MLB level, just seems to be going downhill, not necessarily in performance, but in terms of entertainment, some of the different tweaks they're doing to try and help out and appeal to maybe a younger demographic, and they continue to reject it because the changes just aren't big enough or whatever. You know what I mean? It's just trying to flirt with a gray area where nobody's winning between younger people and the traditionalists of the game. I'd love to talk a little bit, maybe in an episode, about baseball and what they could maybe pull from softball, because softball, especially with this College World Series, is killing the ratings.
Yeah.
Killing it. And people are, you see the stands there in Oklahoma City. I mean, people are invested. This is a product that is growing. It's been popular, but it's growing through the roof is college softball right now. And maybe it's starting to become maybe one of the most popular, if not contending to become one of the most popular female sports in just athletics, period, when you consider just the popularity and the fandom and the TV ratings, because there's about to be a big TV rights fight to get college softball and get this College World Series, just because the ratings are starting to back that up. Now, to pull in the Big Ten, Northwestern made it through the regionals and made it to the College World Series, but ended up getting knocked out by the buzzsaw that is Oklahoma, which, by the way, I'm not exactly sure. This will be out Friday morning, right? Our episode here. So Friday morning, the whole thing might be over. Oklahoma plays with Texas in the Red River rivalry, which is amazing.
How ironic is it? The 2 teams leaving the Big 12 for the SEC are representing the Big 12 in the final series of the College World Series.
Somebody called it the SEC championship on Twitter. I thought that was pretty well done. But the Red River rivalry, it's taking place, and by this point it's kind of mute. But if you missed it, wake up and see what exactly happened. Game 1 of it's double elimination of best of 3 series, Wednesday, Thursday, and then game 3, if necessary, if they're split, would be on Friday. Now, keep in mind, Oklahoma is 56-3 this year, and a lot of folks who pay more attention than I do to college softball not only are talking about Oklahoma as the best team in the country this season, but they're considering Oklahoma the greatest team that's ever been assembled on a softball diamond.
I heard
it is
college
ridiculous.
Team, period.
Yes, I did as well. I
Like,
did as well.
college team, it doesn't matter the sport, gender, doesn't matter. Period. That's a tough. They haven't even won the national title yet. Well, they may have by the time people are hearing this.
Right.
But they haven't even won the national championship at the time that we're recording this, and they're still saying that they're the best. I saw stats about them. Was it 111-5 in the first inning of this season? And 2 of those came in the first game against UCLA in the Super Regional. Or no, in the last game. Sorry. It wasn't the Super Regional, in the semifinals. Yeah.
And I was watching that game because it was, watch both of them because it was a double header. UCLA actually beat Oklahoma, which was enough. Like, whoa! Like,
only
it had
the third or fourth loss that they got.
Their third loss.
Yeah, third. Yeah.
And in that game, you had Maya Brady from UCLA hit 2 home runs, who of course is the niece of Tom Brady, which got a lot of media attention. But nonetheless, I sat there and watched that game. I'm like, Oklahoma's not human, right? Like they're gonna show us next game, and sure enough,
I saw it was 2-0. I was like, what? Seriously, already, huh?
They just destroyed UCLA. Jocelyn Allo had 2 home runs in that game. One was a grand slam. Now, keep in mind too, Jocelyn Allo now has 120, and this is before the championship starts. 120 career home runs. I think the next best in college softball history is 96. Like, she is destroying the record books. And you could see that was a team not to be trifled with. They were a little heated about the loss they just took. So this Oklahoma softball team is, of course, the one that knocked Northwestern out. And you can kind of see why as you continue to watch them. But I just wanted to bring up the larger point, too.
40
college
times.
Softball is fun.
Yeah, oh, yeah. 40 times they won a game by mercy rule.
That's insane. They're not even playing full games.
Loss. And here's that brings up another thing, just a real quick side tangent right there. Why doesn't college baseball have a mercy rule?
That's a good question. I also am curious. You saw the MLB last year with double headers. They switched to 7 innings.
7 innings, yeah.
College, they still go 9.
I'm not as opposed to that as what some people, traditionalists, would be, just because. But I will say, those last 2 innings sometimes are pivotal in a game. I mean, but you know what? Like we talked about it in the first half of this quarter. There are 17 different things that could happen that would make those last 2 innings not very pivotal. But like, come on, when you get to the point where you're down 21-3 in the 6th, let's get through the 7th and just say, okay, we're done. Make it through 7 to where you've got, a majority of a game in. And just say, look, you haven't shown anything by now. You're down by 18 runs. While you could score 19 runs in the next 2 innings, it's highly unlikely, especially the way the things have been playing out this game. We're gonna, end it because goodness gracious, you're adding another hour.
Very rarely in a game where a run rule could be used, but it isn't because there isn't. Does the team ever come back? Like,
correct, right? That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, even the players are of understanding of like, boy, this was not the game.
And I heard the comparison or the thing. Somebody talking about this yesterday, and they said, when you get into those games that it's not an elimination game, and maybe you do that. If it's an elimination game, there is no run rule,
right?
But like, it's not an elimination game, so these teams are playing for tomorrow. They start putting their worst arms in, so it just gets worse and worse and worse. Because as a coach, I'm never going to go up and tell my kids to go up and swing at anything so they strike out.
Right.
I can't down the ball. I can't just hand off to the fullback and have him fall down after 2 yards. I'm going to tell my kids to go, or my players to go up there and hit the ball.
Yep.
Now the defense needs to get us out, but at the same time, come on, let's, we're up 22 runs with 2 innings left. Let's end it.
The only thing I will say, and I think because your point really is trying to be specified to college baseball, right? Not the
Yes,
MLB.
because high school has a run rule,
Yeah.
little league has a run rule. Now, Major League Baseball, those are grown men.
Well,
Okay?
and correct. And I was going to bring up, I have enjoyed for whatever reason, and maybe it's just
I know where
because
you're
it's a
going with
couple of
this, I think.
yeah, maybe it's just because it's a couple of the icons I can actually still feel a connection with that play in the MLB. It's such a new wave where there's no nostalgia, there's no more romance. I don't feel connection with many of the players. But when you see Albert Pujols take the mound and throw some pitches, I am glued. That's one of the things that gets me to tune in.
Anthony Rizzo still posts every once in a while on social media that he has a 0.00 ERA. Because I think he's pitched in 2 or 3 different innings in his career and he hasn't given up a run. So
it's great. I do love those things.
So yeah, I mean, when it gets to the majors, no, that's grown man stuff. You gotta, you take your lumps because tomorrow is another day. You're gonna, but like when it comes to college down, I don't see any benefit from playing all 9, no matter what the score is.
Yep.
I just don't.
No arguments here. All right. Stereotypical. We went a little heavy in the first quarter, so let's go ahead and move to the second. All right, as we start the second quarter here. Ooh. Oh, are you ready? Are you ready for the shootout?
No.
Okay.
I was just
again, I'm kind of taking those cue cards.
I know. I forget that there is like you work in like TV and radio and stuff, so
where you have to go off of all those signs all the time.
You have to go off of visual cues, and then I give them to you, and you're like, "Oh, we're going into this." No. I'll just do this.
Yeah. So if you are listening for the shootout, that's going to be coming next quarter. So stay with us for that. That's right. But real quick here in the second quarter, we want to get to the college basketball rankings. I believe Sam and I have seen 2 different way too early rankings. I'm going to go with the one that I've pulled up here, and this is from CBS Sports and was done and put together by Gary Parrish. And we wanted to take a look at the Big Ten Conference because we've talked for a couple of weeks. I'm not so sure the Big Ten's going to have quite the same strong season that we've seen the last 4 or 5 years. Yeah. Now, granted, keep in mind what we've seen the last 4 or 5 years is rather historic for a conference and what the production level has been for the Big Ten. So just because you don't reach your historic standard, you know what I mean? It's not the end of the world, right. But it's something to note. So as we take a look at the list put together from CBS Sports and Gary Parrish, the way too early rankings, and this was updated just a few days ago. So this is post NBA draft deadline decisions and some more of the transfer portal decisions being made. Number 1, Gonzaga. Which makes sense with Drew Timme coming back. Yeah, every year
it would have been close to number 1 if Drew Timme hadn't come back.
Well, I think if Timme doesn't come back, and of course they also got the transfer Malachi Smith.
Yeah,
they're certainly not number 1, and number 1 would be who's number 2 on this list now, North Carolina, because North Carolina brought just about everybody back as well.
Yeah, but I honestly thought it would be. I mean, I'm not shocked by Gonzaga being there. I wouldn't have been shocked if they would have still put them number 2 behind North Carolina, even with Drew Timme coming. Honestly, North Carolina's just as stacked, but it's like, well, okay, we're not there. There are still some question marks. Maybe Gonzaga has less question marks. Maybe. Mm-hmm. I mean, but we're also looking at it in June, and they don't start playing until November.
You're right, and I
should have mentioned 5 months out.
Right. And I should have mentioned for listeners, too, for the Tar Heels, if you've missed what they've returned, they returned Armando Bacot, who might be the second best player in the country. You bring back Caleb Love. You bring back Leaky Black. Like most of that core's back, basically, except for Brady Manick. That's the guy with the headband and the red hair. That's pretty much all that's coming off of that core, and that's a team that made it to the championship game. So there's a lot of reason to be excited in Chapel Hill. I'll run through some more. Number 3, Houston. Number 4, Kentucky. And, of course, Kentucky brings back the National Player of the Year from last year, Oscar Tshiebwe. So the Wildcats come in number 4.
I'm shocked that he came back.
Why
I
is
guess
that?
I'm not shocked. I'm just really surprised. As much of a double machine that he was, I mean, he has such a high like upside when it comes to being young and putting up those types of stats. I'm surprised that he didn't make the jump.
Well, part of me is curious too in today's day and age of NBA draft evaluation because it's so much different. I actually had a conversation with somebody who played with the Bulls in the 90s not that long ago. We were talking about potential NBA draft prospects, and he goes, "Look, like I know I played in the NBA and stuff," and he goes, "But what they're looking for now is so far different. I couldn't give you any insight. Like
Wow.
it's so remotely different what they look for. I don't know."
Is this recent? Like, is this a start of a like a pendulum shift?
Well, we've heard of positionless basketball and stuff
Mm-hmm.
for a little while now, but now I think enough of the NBA has kind of transitioned
And
into
that's what I was asking is, are they starting to make that move to where it's the norm? So now
yes,
everything's shifting, the analysis and the analyzation of players is shifting to that rather than the way that we've been used to.
correct. Yeah,
Okay.
it's pretty hyper sped now at this point
Yeah.
too. So
Yeah.
it's really ramped up. So I'm not sure with Shibwe's maybe lateral movements if he's somebody who the NBA is high on. Not saying that they're not interested in, but maybe not as high on as they once would have been.
Yeah.
So it might be a little bit of a product of that, and the NIL guarantees that came with
I
it
was
coming
gonna
back to
say
Lexington.
maybe he is not sold 100% that he, or maybe he wasn't happy with where they were,
Projecting.
projecting him, and he thought, "Oh, I can still make money, and I can stay in college and develop more." And yeah, there we go.
Reports are showing he's going to get 7 figures from NIL deals there in Lexington. So
Not shocking, but still amazing to think about.
yes. So Kentucky at number 4,
So I
Arkansas.
will buy a car from Oscar Shibwe Chrysler Dodge in Lexington next year.
You and all of Big Blue Nation. Arkansas checks in number 5, coming off the great season with the Eric Musselman.
Not surprised.
Duke number 6 in John Shire's first year as head coach.
Okay.
Baylor will be 7, Kansas 8, Tennessee 9, UCLA 10. And of course, this is all by CBS Sports and Gary Parrish. Here's where I'm going to branch off and just take a look at the Big Ten. You notice no Big Ten teams
None
in
in
the top 10.
Right.
Correct. The highest ranked Big Ten team, according to CBS Sports and Gary Parrish, here in the first week of June, has the Indiana Hoosiers at number 16. And
That's
we can
the
talk about
leader
them.
in like the preseason favorite to win the Big Ten is the highest ranked team at 16.
Yeah,
That's a down year. That's a projected down year for the Big Ten if that's the case.
Now, what's really interesting, though, is the Big Ten gets a little support here on the back end. So, number 18 in these rankings, Michigan. So, the Wolverines come in there despite losing Musa Diabate and Caleb Houston.
They're not going to be bad.
No. And you bring back Hunter Dickinson. And honestly, Dickinson's going to give quite the fight and maybe is a projected early favorite. It kind of depends who you ask for Big Ten Player of the Year at this point.
Yeah, I agree.
Moving from there, 22. This one surprised me. According to CBS Sports, Purdue comes in at number 22. Sam is our Purdue fan.
And
what
I'm
do you think of this?
grinning ear to ear. Well, honestly, they lost a lot. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that we didn't lose much. I mean, when you lose a lottery pick and then another draft pick, and I've seen Sasha being, projected to potentially, get drafted somewhere in there. I mean, you're losing potentially 3 draft picks from a team that should have won a Big Ten title and maybe even gotten to the Final Four.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still a lot there, and they've got the Mr. Basketball from Indiana coming in. They've even got the runner-up to Mr. Basketball in Indiana coming in. So they've got, and I'm sorry, but I kind of, and this may be the homer in me because I'm from Indiana, but when you get Mr. Basketball from Indiana, that should be something pretty big no matter where he goes, because
Right.
Indiana is, basically cornfields and basketball. That's what we do in Indiana.
Yep.
So I mean, when you get Mr. Basketball, that's the best player in probably the best state for basketball.
So my question would be, though, because you talked about, you lose Sasha.
Yeah.
Jaden's going to be in the NBA draft. Eric Hunter transfers out.
Oh, I forgot about him too. Isaiah
Thompson
Thompson
transfers out. Who are the guards?
See, that's the biggest question mark.
And do you just roll with the two freshmen you're talking about, Mr. Basketball and the runner up, because you have Braden Smith, who 5'10" is going to be one of the guards.
Right.
Fletcher Lawyer, who was the runner up, and some would argue that maybe he could have won Mr. Basketball.
Yeah.
Brother of Foster Lawyer, who of course used to play at Michigan State. So you have Fletcher Lawyer, who's a little bit bigger. He's definitely bigger than his brother Foster was. Yeah. Maybe he could play the two. And maybe that'd be preferable because he's such a great shooter. But do you roll with those two freshmen? I mean, it's a big question right now for Purdue's backcourt. The front court, you have two dinosaurs. You have two 7-foot guys that you just roll out there. But the backcourt,
yet again,
yeah, I know it's Matt Painter somehow has projected growth charts of like every 8-year-old and across the globe, and just is able to keep track of.
If you hit 7 foot, be sure to. You might as well put it on your calendar like Groundhog Day. You're gonna get a call from Matt Painter.
I wonder if all ceilings in all the venues in West Lafayette have like a clearance maximum raised in the last few years, where everything has to go up so they can afford to shelter and house and accommodate for all these giants.
We've got some giants coming in.
But I mean, your front court's figured out in that respect, but the backcourt. I mean, the backcourt was a little bit of an issue last year, even with Sasha being the shooter he was, even with Jaden. You still needed somebody to bring the ball up and couldn't figure that out. So that's my big question. And a big part of the reason why I find it puzzling, Purdue sits at number 22 right now.
Well, and maybe that's the way they're going to go, is with the freshmen in the backcourt. And then I'm going to trust Matt Painter. He's been doing it for a minute or two,
and fair enough.
So like I guess I've got to, and it's really easy for me to coach from my office chair,
right?
But at the same time, he's been doing it for so long that I'm going to trust that if he thinks that those freshmen can be what it takes to be successful. And don't get me wrong, being a Purdue fan, I've never had the only expectation of a national championship has happened twice in my life, and last year was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, if there's contention for a Big Ten championship and we're going to get a good bid and maybe disrupt, and you never know. I mean, especially in today's day and age, you never know when you're going to get hot and make a run and maybe get to the Final Four. So I'm just going to trust Matt Painter that he knows what he's doing, and if it's a down year, it's a down year. I mean, it happens. I got that from being a Cubs fan.
Well, there's still two more here in the top 25 we can highlight real quick before we take our halftime break. Number 24, Ohio State, and this is a team with some question marks too.
I'm surprised by this one more than Purdue.
And it's interesting because the Buckeyes lose, of course, Malachi Branham, who's a projected potential lottery pick in the NBA draft. E.J. Liddell, who's been one of the best players in the Big Ten for the last many years. But for Ohio State, what the Buckeyes do have is a top 5 recruiting class. They have 4 top 65 recruits coming in. They also hit the portal pretty hard. They got Tanner Holden from Wright State. They got Sean McNeil from West Virginia. Isaac from Oklahoma State. Now, forgive me, I've watched this film, but I do not know how to say his last name as of now, so I'm just going to go with Isaac from Oklahoma State, but another big body for the Buckeyes. So there are pieces there, but and you know what? A lot of this is a lot of guesswork, especially when you're talking June, but it's a lot of just kind of jigsaw puzzling to try and figure out this top 25. But I get your concern about the Buckeyes at 24.
Yeah, they just lost so much.
Yep.
And because if Branham had stuck around, honestly, they'd be above Purdue, probably pushing Michigan and IU with their rankings because of the talent that he is. And honestly, maybe even favored over maybe Michigan now that those two didn't come back. You just don't. He's that good of a player, and obviously since he's being projected as a potential lottery pick, so I'm just more surprised by that 24th position already. I mean, granted, that can change, and maybe that will, but I just don't see Ohio State being that stocked or stacked to come back and be that good yet.
Well,
they got to prove me wrong.
Okay, good enough. And let's round out that preseason top 25 here in June from CBS Sports with Gary Parrish. Number 25, Michigan State. What do you think here?
Well, I was happy to happy to see him still in the top 25. Honestly, surprised that they're over Purdue.
Purdue's over them.
That's what I meant. Meant. Yeah, they're not over Purdue, is what I meant there. So it's I'm happy to see him there because and you know what? Every year that Tom Izzo as a coach should be in the top 25, at least starting out.
And that's a little bit of the bio that Gary Parrish wrote up was, you kind of trust Tom Izzo here. And you look at Michigan State, you bring back two really good point guards. You have A.J. Hoggard, you have Tyson Walker. Jaden Akins is somebody I cannot stress enough. I believe this kid is going to be special. And he's going into his sophomore year. I think you add him on the wing. He's a bit of a combo. He can do two. He could even run a little bit of one if he needed him to, maybe even some three. But you have that piece there. You bring back Malik Hall. You bring back Joey Hauser. There are questions about at the big spot. What do you do there? Because do you just run with Joey Hauser at the 5 and you're playing small ball? How does that work in the Big Ten? How does it work when you face Purdue and there are 9-foot guys that they throw in the paint? There are plenty of questions. And of course, there are a couple of incoming freshmen that are going to be big pieces of this too. Jackson Kohler is a bit of a bigger body. Should say more of a taller body, not so much like a Big Ten stereotypical big, but he's got great footwork. He's kind of the modern day big. You also bring in Trey Holloman. You still have back Pierre Brooks. So it's going to be a little bit of kind of piecing together, but it's really interesting because the last 2 years, the biggest challenge for Tom Izzo and Michigan State has been trying to shorten down the rotation and shorten up the bench. Well, this year, they're not going to have much of an option. They have 9 scholarship players as of right now. It's going to be a shorter bench. So players are going to be more comfortable. It's a different approach from Tom Izzo than what we've seen in years past. And how that works, we'll find out real soon.
Well, again, yeah, like you said, the bio was you got to just kind of trust Tom Izzo. Since it's not his norm, you kind of wonder, what's going on here. Excuse me, because you usually have a bigger bench, a deeper bench, and for him to only go into a rotation of maybe 9 players, that's a big change from seasons past.
And he normally has a big body. I mean, you think back to Xavier Tillman, you think Nick Ward, you think Jaren Jackson Jr., you think Derek Nix, you think Matt Costello, you think Paul Davis. I mean, this list goes on and on and on. So it's definitely a different approach. And I mean, as far as how it works, well, time will tell soon. But so that's a look at the top 25 put together by CBS Sports and Gary Parrish. So again, we ran extremely long, so let's go ahead and hit the halftime break.
Halftime. You are listening to Big Ten Plus 4, hosted on Anchor and StreamYard.
Hey, I'm Pantsless Aaron.
This is Stevie.
And I'm Augie.
And we are BFYTW, a podcast all about playing games and having fun. Our games are usually based on British panel shows and game shows, but we'll play anything that captures our attention and imagination. Why? It's right there in the title.
You'll never guess what the F stands for.
Hi, I'm Shannon.
I'm Jamie.
We're Married with Television, marriedwithtv.com. We are a couple of Hollywood normies on the outskirts of the film and TV industry, and we talk about our favorite TV shows, music, and movies, and sometimes they talk back to us.
Sometimes they do.
Our podcast is Married with Television, one word, on Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, and SoundCloud.
Possibly Amazon soon. And we are a proud member of the Odd Pods Media Network.
Married with TV.
MarriedWithTV.com.
Tweet.
like the sound effect. I want that to replace the whistle.
It'd just be yelling tweet, tweet.
Yeah. All right. So real quick, if you stuck around from the beginning, you know this is where Sam. There you go.
Is that good?
Yes. So we're gonna do shootout with Dalton and a little bit of shootout with Sam. Now,
Two questions
keep in mind.
each.
That's what I was gonna say, because especially as heavy as we are, I think we got to start cutting
We
down
gotta do
some
a
of the
little
fat.
quicker.
So, if somebody isn't quite new or quite used to and are new to this format, I am horrible with pop culture. It's pretty embarrassing. I just kind of live with it. I don't really know too much about TV shows, actors, movies, songs, artists, a lot of different stuff. Meanwhile,
it's going to be hard on you unless you.
I know.
I know.
My nose usually is pretty heavy into like sports stuff and record books and whatnot. So we'll test Sam on the other end with some of the different Big Ten factoids and historical markers. So,
So do you want to alternate?
I think that's the best way.
So I'll give you the first question, then you give me a question, and then we'll do it again.
Let's do it.
All right. So the first question, I went thematic. All right.
Ooh, okay.
We're going Scrubs.
Okay.
Are you familiar with Scrubs at all, Dalton?
I've seen it once on TV, but I couldn't even name a character, so this will be bad.
Oh, goodness gracious. This
Yeah.
might be a dumpster fire for you, big time.
Yeah.
So, from the 100th episode of Scrubs, what song is JD listening to in his bubble bath on his iPod?
Is this open-ended? It can be, because yours are going to be open-ended.
Meaning just you
fill
I'm
in the
not
blank. There's no
I'm not
multiple
giving
choice.
you any multiple. I don't have any multiple choice for you on
Okay. Okay. Scrubs. I'm gonna go no Scrubs TLC.
Goodness,
I'm just using context clues here.
you are horrible at this. Sorry.
Yes.
Because here's the
I don't
thing.
even know who JD is.
I don't know that we can be friends anymore. You have an assignment now. You have to start watching Scrubs.
It's got to add to my list. So I just started, and I'm periodically watching and getting through It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Okay. I have not watched it, but I've been told that it is an amazing show, and I will watch it. I'm just not to it yet.
I don't know who wrote this, because these characters are some of the most vile, selfish, disgusting people that could ever walk the earth. And it tickles me, because I just can't even fathom some of the things in these episodes.
Well, in Scrubs, it's more of like I don't know, it's 12-year-old humor. Like it's funny in the 12-year-old humor style of comedy. It's slapstick, basically. I mean, it's
okay.
There are topics that are good, that are serious or whatever, but they sprinkle in the funny with it, at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So, now once you get to the point where the last season of it's garbage, because what they tried to do is keep it Scrubs when it should have been a spinoff.
Okay.
So it was one of those that they kept it under the label of Scrubs, but it was just it could have been good had it been Scrubs : interns or whatever, to where you could have kept the moniker of Scrubs on there, but it's not the same show or whatever. But well, for the answer to that, it's Africa by Toto.
Oh, that's a good best
because
song.
What
that
the show goes on to kind of play a Wizard of Oz type of theme, like different characters, or one character needs courage to tell a patient something, and somebody needs to find a heart for a donor heart, so they literally made it a Wizard of Oz theme, and Toto was the song on JD's, and if you don't know now, you're gonna know, is JD's the main character of Scrubs.
Oh, okay. How's that?
He's played by Zach Braff. So
I don't even know who Zach Braff is.
You are killing me.
I'm really bad at this. For the
I'm
listeners,
a
I warned
poor
you.
friend
This is
for not making you wiser on this. You're not
this is
gonna
your
come
responsibility.
You're not going to come close to my second question then. So
Yeah,
okay,
probably
well,
not.
you're 0 for 1.
All right, we'll go to shootout with Sam. See if Sam can get one because I'm not confident in my second one either. So we're staying with Big Ten
Especially
basketball for
since it's
both.
scrubs.
Yeah, yeah. But we're gonna go Big Ten basketball for my 2. And the first question is, which Big Ten basketball player in history has the most rebounds in a single season? Big Ten record.
Oh goodness, there are so many in a single season. AC Earl from Iowa.
No, it is not AC Earl. It is, in fact, Jerry Lucas. He had 499 back in 1962. Do you know who had the second most?
I don't.
Jerry Lucas. He had
Are you kidding me?
470 in 1961.
So he broke his own record.
Do you know who has the third most?
I'm going to guess Jerry Lucas.
Jerry Lucas, 442 rebounds
Amazing.
in 1960. Yeah, I was going through the record books and I was like, the top 3 single seasons in Big Ten basketball history for rebounds, all owned by Jerry Lucas. That is
amazing.
Something.
Yeah. And the fact that he did go and have a really productive NBA career is pretty impressive too.
Absolutely. All right. So we're both 0 for 1. And
I embarrassed that, I was that bad. He didn't even enter my mind as a possibility.
Wouldn't have mine either. I knew he had a very prolific career, but the idea that he had nearly 500 rebounds in a single season when they played so many less games, I would not have guessed that Jerry Lucas. I want to see what his average was. I'm going to pull that up while we continue on here. Are you waiting on me?
Yes.
Okay, I got to pull that up.
I'm just putting audio in there so it doesn't sound horribly.
Okay, so in 62, he averaged 17.8 rebounds a game.
Good Lord.
In 61, the average was 17.4. In 60, it was 16.4. But that is ridiculous.
Wow. Okay, question 2. Because we got to put a little speed on this, okay?
Yes. Yep.
What is the name of JD and Kim's baby?
DJ.
You just went Oppo from. Okay. No, the reason why I picked this is because they named their child Sam. So his name it's Sammy. Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, so
0 for 2.
0 for 2.
See, it doesn't help that I just assumed that you'd seen Scrubs because anybody who isn't living under a rock has seen Scrubs, and that's my downfall. That's my fault.
Yeah, no, I just again, pop culture it's just not my strong suit.
It's not your bag, baby.
Now that one I got, Austin Powers. Okay. Okay. So for the final shootout with Sam question, we're going to be taking a look at assists. Who in Big Ten basketball history has the record for most assists in a single game?
Ooh, in a single game.
Single game.
Great audio for podcasting, I tell you what. And here I thought you could see my arms folded. I'm not typing anything, looking up. I'm just trying to think. I always want to say You know what? Anytime I don't know, I'm gonna make Porter Roberts my default answer for anything assists.
I was waiting for AC Earl again, just because
he's going to be my rebound guy.
Mateen Cleaves, Michigan State.
I even thought about Mateen Cleaves, and because honestly, we've had a lot of really good point guards in the Big Ten, but I just honestly in my memory can't remember like anybody breaking records. But I was not surprised when Mateen Cleaves left your lips.
And you take a look at assist records. There's a lot of Mateen, a lot of Cassius Winston, a lot of Magic Johnson all over those record books.
Jeez Louise, how in the world did I miss Magic Johnson?
It wasn't
stupid.
Magic though.
I know that, but at least I could have guessed
that.
like one of the best point guards in NBA history. You know,
so Cleaves had 20 against Michigan on Senior Day in 2000 in that game that went 114-63.
Sweet Lord.
Yeah, we remember that one pretty fondly here around.
I would
parts.
bring a sign to every Michigan State game that just had that score on it. And that was it. That's it.
114-63. And then of course Michigan State not only wins the Big Ten title, wins the Big Ten tourney title, and then wins the national championship.
51 points.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. But okay, so we're running a little heavy. Let's get to the fourth quarter and get to our headlines.
51 points. Good Lord.
Maybe that could just be the headline, 51 points. But no, we'll go with the Sam Sentinel and Sam Sprunger. What do we got?
Well, I heard an absolutely interesting where did that come from type. Like a word origin or phrase origin. I have another podcast, and you've heard the listeners have heard the promo for the 500 Section Lounge. We do a segment called Let's Chat, and what that originally started as was a segment where we talked about where the origin of words came from. Now we've changed it since, and it's an unusual topic basically, and we just chat about it. So Let's Chat came from World War I, when the soldiers were in the trenches. There was lice there that was very similar to head lice, and they called the lice chat, but it would burrow into their coats. So at night they would have to pull the lice out of their coats. Well, when they did that, they got in groups and sat there and talked while they were picking the lice out. And so they were chatting, pulling lice. So whenever they'd want to get together and pull the lice out of their coat and talk, they'd say, let's chat. So therefore, there's the origin of Let's Chat. That's where that segment come from. Do you know where the term upset came from? We're all familiar with what an upset is. Man of War was a horse that was one of the before Secretariat was like argued to be one of the best race horses ever. Okay. Back in 1919, like that's how long ago it was. And he lost his first race, and I believe maybe even his only race in Saratoga Falls, New York, to a horse named Upset. And he was a long shot, and Upset beat Man of War. And that is where the term upset came from. And now anytime you say upset, we've lost where it came from. But before, it was just basically pulling back to the, oh my gosh, this long shot beat the best horse ever to run at the time to run. And here it is. And now a small caveat, same track, Secretariat. You've heard of Secretariat. He lost his first race, or his only race maybe, at Saratoga Falls as well, to a horse named Jim Dandy. So whenever you hear somebody, and this one's probably a less apparent, like less heard, but like when you see something that's really good, you go, oh wow, that's a Jim Dandy.
And that's what it's referring to.
And that's what it's referring to. So a little rest of the story from the Sam Sentinel. Not a kind of a fun thing, because like, you know, everybody knows where or uses the word upset. You know, St. Peter's upset 3 different teams to get to the Elite 8. Well, but where did that come from? So there we go.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I dig that.
Yeah, like I heard that from Rick Neuheisel was telling that, kind of brushed on it and on the radio, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna look that up." And yeah, upset. The term "upset" comes from when a long shot horse beat the best horse, basically David and Goliath. That's where the upset comes from.
I like it. That's
Yeah.
a nice Sam Sentinel.
Yeah, try once in a while. Once in a while, it's not me just complaining about stuff.
All right, with the Dalton Daily, this is more or less going to be a bit of a PSA. The College Football Hall of Fame ballot was released, and there's 80 players on that Hall of Fame ballot. 17 of them are from the Big Ten Conference. So I wanted to rip through some of them, and I'm going to do it alphabetically. Flozell Adams, of course, played at Michigan State from 94 to 97, big offensive lineman. Larry Burton from Purdue, split in back in the 70s. Kijana Carter from Penn State, you remember the running back from 91 to 94. Dallas Clark, the tight end from Iowa from 2000 to 02. DJ Dozier from Penn State, running back from 83 to 86. Vaughn Dunbar from Indiana, running back from 90 to 91. Robert Gallery from Iowa, offensive lineman from 2000 to 2003. Kevin Hardy from Illinois, linebacker, played from 92 to 95. Steve Hutchinson, offensive lineman at Michigan from 97 to 2000. No relation to Aiden Hutchinson, the great defensive end that just was drafted by the Lions. James Laurinaitis from Ohio State, linebacker from 05 to 08. Chris McIntosh at Wisconsin, offensive lineman in the 90s. And, of course, he's the athletic director at Wisconsin now. Paul Posluszny from Penn State, linebacker in the mid-2000s. Antoine Randall from IU did everything at the turn of the century.
Throw a touchdown in the Super Bowl.
Yes. I mean, literally did everything.
As a receiver.
Simeon Rice from Illinois, linebacker in the early 90s. Taylor Stubblefield from Purdue, wide receiver with many memories from Sam Sprunger in the early 2000s. Troy Vincent, Wisconsin, DB in the late 80s, early 90s. And Chris Ward, offensive lineman from Ohio State, mid to late 70s. So we'll see which of those Big Ten players can make it through on into the College Football Hall of Fame. Those are the 17 out of the 80 that will be voted on. And, of course, that'll do it for another episode of the Big Ten Plus 4 here this week. For Sam Sprunger over there, myself, Dalton Shetler, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you soon.
See you later.